Robin.
Sounds good.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, so we're so glad you all are joining us here for this special presentation as part of the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative. We have Tim Hathaway. We're joined by Tim Hathaway today. He is the Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse New York, and the HVCI is housed at PCANI, so we are thrilled to be offering this presentation. My name is Maggie Dixon. I am the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative Development Coordinator. So I head up all of the webinars and the webinar effort. So I have a couple quick housekeeping notes and then a few reminders about the HVCI webinar series. So first, this session will be recorded, so we are going to put it up on the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative website for your access later whenever you so choose to access it. There are closed captioning services available, so if you head to the bottom of your screen and click on live transcript, there are subtitles. We remind everyone to please put yourselves on mute just to keep the focus on the speaker. I'm going to try my best to mute folks if they join the meeting and they're not automatically muted. So please don't feel offended if I mute you immediately, but please try to keep that in mind. The slides will be available following the presentation. So in my follow-up email, I'll send all that info out. And then finally, the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative is a component of the Preschool Development Birth Through 5 grant, and a component of that grant is data collection. So following this webinar, I will be sending out a survey that's for the Center for Human Services Research. So we do ask that you could please fill out that survey for our data collection purposes, and I'll send more info about that in the follow-up email. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim.
Thanks, Maggie. Really appreciate your getting everything set for us. Welcome, everybody. It is a pleasure to kind of see you. So a lot of people are off camera, and that's fine. I want you to feel comfortable with that. I know how Zoom fatigue goes, but I'm going to give you a warning that there are a couple of spots in the next hour that I'm going to invite you to share some things on screen. So be ready. If you don't have a piece of paper and a pencil, you're going to have to make a drawing later. Okay, so get a piece of paper and pencil really quick. The other thing that would be great is if in the chat box, you would just type real quickly, where are you from in the state? So upstate, downstate, left, right, anywhere. But just throw that in the chat box really quick for me. It would be great to hear that. So I hear some upstates, Schenectady, Western New York, Brooklyn. Joe Pate, hello, Joe. Long Island. Oh, good. I love it. All over the state. That is fantastic. So I'm going to talk for like 3 minutes about Child Abuse Prevention Month. And then we're going to dive in and we're going to spend this morning actually talking about some prevention strategies. And one of the things that is so exciting to see all of, like I see Western New York now, upstate New York, all of the different locations that Herkimer, yay for Herkimer. Herkimer does all kinds of great child abuse prevention stuff. So we're excited about what happens all through the year around prevention, but especially in April, because there are so many different organizations who are really kind of tooting that horn about the importance of prevention and what's happening. And so in this year, we're excited. Once again, we have all 62 counties across New York State where there is some sort of prevention celebration related to April that's going on. So, and that really is about community organizations, about individuals like yourselves saying this is important work. A couple of the highlights that we have that we're really excited about. First of all, if you missed this early in the month, the governor's office was gracious enough to do some illuminations across the state for us. So Niagara Falls and the Cuomo Bridge and a variety of other state properties were illuminated in blue to celebrate Cat Month. If you haven't seen that, visit our Facebook page and you'll see some pictures there from those illuminations. So that's a great way to get people kind of talking about this work. We have had a number of presentations that are going on across the state related to this. There are a lot of local celebrations. Herkimer, I bring up Herkimer because they're doing something, I think, next week. And they actually have Dr. Melissa Merrick, who is Prevent Child Abuse America's national director, who will be a part of the Herkimer event. Dr. Merrick is also appearing next week. Commissioner Sheila Poole from OCFS on the 20th. There'll be a session for programs that are connected with OCFS. So that's certainly something to look for. And then as we move toward the end of the month, we're really excited because April 30th is ACEs Awareness Day at the state legislature. And for those of you that don't know this already, we received a huge gift this April in that a piece of legislation just passed, so it will be moving into state law, that we will add ACE training and resilience training to the mandated reporter training. So that is a big deal. I think we're the first in the nation to really take that step of connecting the mandated reporter work with, you also need to understand adverse childhood experiences and how to build resilience for kids. So that's something that over the next year and a half, 2 years, we'll be talking about implementation of. But again, really critical work for building out prevention across the state. So again, lots of great stuff happening. I know that so many of you are directly involved in that work. So we again appreciate your efforts and what you're doing on behalf of kids and families around prevention. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and we're going to shift a little bit. We're going to talk about the work of prevention across the state, and more specifically about some strategies related to prevention. Prevention is like learning. It all happens in the context of relationship. And one of the things that I think is challenging about prevention, and all of you that do this work already know this, that so many times prevention feels a little bit like an abstract concept, that we're talking about something that it's a little hard to get our fingers on because it's hard to track. How do we quantify things that have not happened or things that we've stopped from happening, right? But then also because prevention ends up being defined in a lot of different ways. So I want to start with this question for you. And again, it's time to use your chat box. So we're not going to do a poll. We thought about a poll, but we're not going to do a poll. So in your chat box, really quick, type in how much time each week do you spend on prevention?
I'm happy to read out responses to you too, Tim.
Good. That's great. Yep, thank you. How much time do you spend on prevention?
We are getting some everyday, daily, 50% of the time. Okay. A lot of dailies.
Okay.
90% every day, can't measure it.
Can't measure, okay, all right.
Half of my visit for home visit daily.
Okay, all right, so very good. So that's kind of our first hurdle around so much of this work. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but defining prevention is really one of those challenging pieces. We had some discussion last week with a work group that was working with some legislators and some national folks. And we were talking about a statewide plan for prevention for New York State. And we don't currently really have a statewide plan. We've got some elements and some starts on it, but we don't have a real broad statewide plan for prevention. But we talked about, the first thing that we have to do is define prevention. And all of you are familiar with tertiary, secondary, and primary prevention concepts, where, at the primary level, we're really focused on trying to stop bad things happening before they happen. And for prevent child abuse, for many of you that are involved in home visiting, that's where you're living, is in that space of really trying to build strong families and build connections. You said it earlier, relationship that supports people before something goes wrong. But for many of you, you're working on secondary kind of work where there are families at risk. And again, many of our families coming into home visiting are at risk for whatever reason, or in risk for whatever reason. And then some of you may be even working with that third level where there's already been some child abuse that's happened, some maltreatment, and we're trying to stop any further harm from going on. So for so much of what we talk about today, when we start talking about concrete strategies that you hopefully are using, and you might have some of your own too that you can talk about, but these are really applicable across all three pieces of that. So if you were going to do 25% more prevention work, how would that change your week? How would things look different if you were even just doing 25% more? And people can, I think, Maggie, people can unmute themselves if they want to, or you can add a comment in the chat box. What do you think? Would your life be significantly different if you were doing 25% more prevention? How would it look different?
We can invite folks to unmute too if you're comfortable with that, Tim.
Yes.
If you just want to unmute and talk, or add to the chat box.
Yep, either way. Is that a hard question? It could be a hard question, right? So if you were spending more time on prevention, how would that change what you're doing?
So we have a comment saying it depends. Am I doing more in hours or more in impact? Folks kind of saying it's a little difficult. It's overwhelming to think about that because all other areas of work would be affected. More time would be needed in my workday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good points.
Yeah. So absolutely, it is a tough question, because again, part of it I think is because prevention is a little amorphous. It's like, okay, what exactly, what prevention activity would I be doing more of? So that's part of the question, right? And then part of the question is too, like, if it's a different activity than I'm currently doing, do I need more time in my day to actually do that? And what would that look like? So what we want to do over the next couple of minutes is talk about very specific prevention activities. And here is a spoiler alert. You are not going to hear anything that you're going, oh my gosh, I've never heard that before. But hopefully we're going to talk about intentionality. And I know from my years of doing home visiting with Head Start, that intentionality is something that all of you are very familiar with. It's a concept that home visiting loves because we want to be intentional about everything, every element that we bring into that home. We want to connect a purpose and a reason to that. And so part of what we're hoping to work on today is really this idea of intentionality around prevention activities specifically. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. I'm just checking out the chat box to see if there's anything. So interesting comments. Nature of what we do would significantly change our home visitation goal. However, we are always looking for ways to meet families' needs, and they're especially partners, social service driven. So yeah, absolutely. So, and especially for people that are doing like court mandated home visiting or anything that's connected with mandated folks, that concept really would change some things. Smaller caseloads, think about the factors and being more aware of those around me. So yeah, good. Okay. All right. So I want you to take a minute and intentionality. So I want you to think about a real experience that you have had in your own life. So I want you to get something concrete, something that was difficult for you. And it can be life-changing, or it can be something that was run-of-the-mill, but something that was difficult for you. Now in the chat box, so I'm going to keep you running to the chat box. So in the chat box, type in, what did you gain from that, from moving through that difficult experience? What did you gain? Momentum.
Comments about seeing who your true support system is, momentum for the next situation, new perspective, resilience, confidence and strength, appreciation for my family. So again, support system, a lot of resilience, perspective, additional resources, and a lot of patience. Confidence, courage.
Yeah, so I love all of those comments. So as we think about this work around prevention, oftentimes I think we end up overcomplicating prevention in a lot of ways. So all of the things that you've added, and the thing that I added in that chat box, we're collecting, all of us together, as we move through life, are collecting a whole set of things that really help us build assets. And they're tough lessons. They're hard lessons. We could talk about street cred, people who really have come up through, all the trials and tribulations of life, and they have this sense of, how to make it through the world. And we certainly talk about that in terms of trauma response for kids. They're learning certain ways, adapting their behavior in certain ways to manage those trauma responses. But for many of us, these resilience assets are pretty critical kind of things that help us move forward in terms of building the sort of assets that help us do prevention work. So now, pencil and paper, here's the piece. So you're gonna have to have your camera on, okay? Now, I'm not a great artist, so my hand is up on this. I get it, and you're gonna say, I can't draw anything. Sure you can, sure you can. So even if it's a stick figure, draw me a picture of hope. And then once you've got it drawn, I want you to put it up in front of your camera so that we can all see it. I'm going to stop the share so we go back to, we'll find our way back to this. Draw a picture of hope for me. What does hope look like? Take a minute. You don't have to rush. This isn't speed drawing. Take a minute. Oh yeah, I'm starting to see him come up. Yeah, look at that. That's like a Van Gogh, Deborah. Thank you. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Lauren. I love your rainbow. Very nice. Shannon, that's awesome. It's a balloon, right, Shannon? A guy with a balloon or a girl with a balloon? All right. Lots of hearts. Sunshine. I love it. Thanks, Melody. Oh, I love that. Some kids and some families. No more COVID. Right. Thumbs up for that. All right. Keep sending them our way. Those are great, everybody.
We have some real artists here.
We do. We do. All right. Thanks, Andre. Good to see you, man. Very cool. So I'm going to, these are great drawings. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to share my screen again. Oops, wait. Let's make sure we get to the right spot here. Okay, so we're going to talk about hope as a prevention strategy. And hope, it's nice because you were able to kind of put some concrete, this is what hope looks like to me. But hope is another one of those terms that sometimes it feels a little squishy, like what are we really talking about? But this is one of the things that you're doing as home visitors that, again, I want us to be a little bit intentional about, because when we think about strategies that actually change trajectory and prevent difficulties, but most importantly, build strong families and build strong kids. Hope is one of the ingredients that is essential to that. There's been quite a bit of research done on hope. Some of you are probably familiar with that. But there are really three things that hope requires. And so I don't know if you've ever heard anybody say, I feel hopeless. Have any of you felt hopeless? You don't have to put your hands up for that. But think about that for just a minute. So we're back to that slide where it said, think about a difficult moment in your own life. So some of you have felt hopeless. And I bet that all of you can identify a family that you're working with that you have a sense they may feel hopeless. You know what that place is like. You know how difficult that experience is. But we can do some things intentionally to build hope. And so here are the things that we can focus on with families around this issue. First of all, and there are three elements to building hope. The first one is the ability to see a future. So can you, as an individual, can the families that you're working with actually see something that they believe is a better future for themselves? And sometimes that's really easy. Sometimes that is really, really difficult. But one of the things that you can do is help families begin to frame that picture of what a future really looks like. And sometimes, because if you're like me, sometimes that future gets a little fuzzy and a little gray, so it's out of focus and I can't really see it very well. So sometimes the role is about helping people remember what that future looks like. So that's the first thing. And there are some really concrete expressions of that. You know, so let's talk about what you hope for your children. Those are things that get people thinking about, you know, I want my kids to have this. And many of you do that already when you're doing assessments with families. The second piece around hope is setting a path. And so you have to be able to see how that piece of life or how your future looks better. And then you have to actually be able to identify that there are some things that can set you on the path to really achieving that. So for instance, is if I have this hope that my children will grow up in a safe place, in a safe environment, and never be harmed. So that's a great vision. That's a great future that I can see for my kids. What's the path? So what are the things that I as a parent can do to really keep my child safe? You know, so what do I need to do? It's about, you know, building people into my life that help me do that. It's about finding whatever sort of support that I need around me to be able to do those kind of things, but beginning to help people set that path. And then the final piece, the third piece of building hope with people is helping them identify their ability to take action. And so many times we get stuck with this and people get to a spot, that's part of hopelessness, right? It's that sense of I'm powerless in the face of all of these bad things. But helping people identify, here's what you can do to actually take that next step. So we talk about hope because, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to think intentionally about, child abuse prevention is this great concept. We love to talk about it. But what are we actually talking about? We're talking about helping people build a sense of hope for themselves so that they can do the work of building strong families together. So all right, so there's one tool, there's one asset that I want you to work on. Everybody has seen this, I bet. This is not unfamiliar to any of you, I am sure, because so many of you that are doing work around adverse childhood experiences and trauma, this is a piece that just makes a lot of sense to you. We're going to play around with this just a little bit this morning. So what I want you to do is, again, grab that piece of paper that you or defined a lot of different ways, right? So a thing could be a feeling, a thing could be an emotion, it could be an actual object, but person, place, or thing for each one of these. So first, around safety, I want you to write down on your piece of paper, so where is the place, where is the person, who is the person, what is the thing that makes you feel safe? And so we're talking, when we talk safety, we're talking both physical safety, so you can address physical safety, or emotional safety. I feel like I'm in a place where people are going to accept me and I'm not going to be judged or harmed or those kind of things. So write down person, place, or thing around safety. And hopefully you're able to identify very specifically one of those, that you have that in your world. Then go on to trustworthiness. And it could be the same person, place, or thing, but I challenge you to think about, maybe there's somebody else that you can think of. When you think about this idea of trustworthiness, that I know it's always going to be there for me, or they're going to back up what they say. So this person, or in this space, in this environment, I know that what they say they're going to do, they're going to follow through on. I can trust them to be steadfast for me. So what's that person, place, or thing that's trustworthy for you? And then we're going to talk peer support. And again, could be a place, person, thing might be challenging here, but maybe. So who do you go to? Where do you go to when you're looking for peer support? That idea that, when you just need to commiserate and you need somebody who you can bounce ideas off of, where are you going to find that? Who are you going to find that with? So we've got through 3 of those. Now we're going to talk about collaboration and mutuality. So just a definition around that. So collaboration and mutuality is that sense that we are all working together to get something important done. So I'm not in this alone, I'm not by myself, but we're all working together and we're going to try and achieve something that's bigger than us. Collaboration and mutuality. So where's the place? Who's the person? All right, empowerment. Let's go on to that one. So again, let's define empowerment. Empowerment is this idea that you have somebody who's saying, yeah, you should go ahead and do that. I think that's a great idea. Let's explore that. So it's this sense of giving you opportunity, helping you open the doors to pursue what you're passionate about. Empowerment. So who's the person? What's the place where that happens for you? And then this last one, cultural, historical, and gender issues. So now we're talking about kind of a little bit about the stuff inside. You know, when we peel the skin off, what are those things that make up in so many ways kind of who I am as a person? What's my cultural identity? What's my history that brought me to this place? What's my family's history? And what are the gender issues that really impact me on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis sometimes? So who are the people, where's the place that you can talk about that and those kind of things? All right, so does anybody have all of those filled in? You can put it in the chat box, or if you want to go off mute. Anybody have all of those filled in? You're able to say, I can specifically identify somebody for each one of these. Yes. All right. So we've got a number of people that, yes, I'm seeing lots and lots of people saying yes in the affirmative. So that is excellent. I am thrilled. Yes, but some were hard. When we start talking about intentionality around child abuse prevention, this is a great big slice. When we think about building strong families, this is a big slice. How many of you, and again, you can put this in your chat box if you want to, or just shout it out. How many of you feel like this work around these 6 principles are things that you already focus on in your day-to-day work? And it could be that you're a home visitor who's going out on home visits every day. It could be that you're a program manager who is managing a program. It could be that you're an administrator, or maybe you're an advocate. But how many of you feel like these things are pretty central to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? Okay, so again, I'm seeing quite a few people. Okay, so now comes the challenge part. So a brave soul who'd like to just talk a little bit about So what do you, and you can pick any one of these, but maybe what do you feel your work is related to building safety or trustworthiness? How do you do that work? What does that look like for you? You got a brave soul that wants to speak their voice.
Are you asking for myself or for the people that I work with?
I think it can be either one. You can choose it. I'd love to hear if you're, so I'm going to ask you, if you're a supervisor, it'd be great to hear you talk about, so as a supervisor, how do you do this to support the people that you're working with?
Okay, I'm not a supervisor, but I am a home visitor. And to support my clients, trying to help them find at least one of these items is a goal of mine. Letting them find it and realize that it's important, and finding out what they think of all of it. So that's a goal that I have in helping them to advocate for themselves, and knowing that, and teaching them that they can advocate for themselves, and watching them as they realize that on their own.
That's great. Thank you. How about somebody else? Anybody else have thoughts about that? What are some specific things that you're doing to help build these for people?
Tim, this is Andre Eaton. Hello, everybody. I think in the context, particularly of COVID, it really is what I said earlier, meeting families where they are and meeting their immediate needs, letting them bring their particular needs for resources to the programs that we work with, and making sure that the programs that we work with are also safe, and working with those particular families. One of the things that we realized around the COVID situation is equity of resources, and making sure that even across the state, that resources are spread out equitable across the state with the families that we serve, since many of these resources came kind of late for services in the COVID climate to many of the neighborhoods that we share in. So that's one. Two, with staff, making sure that they're safe as well, and because everybody was impacted this way. And making sure that they have the needs that they need to feel safe and secure and working with the families. And then three, changing. I mean, going from an in-home approach to now a hybrid approach, using formats that we're using today to keep being engaged with those families who need us the most. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Andre. Other thoughts? How are you using these or promoting these pieces with whatever environment you're working in? You can drop it in the chat box too. Okay, so you've still got your list, and you had your list of for yourself where you kind of found each one of these things. So let's build this out just a little bit at this point. So I want you to take your list that you had, and I want you to whoops, I'm going to go back. What I want you to do now is I want you to, for each one of these elements, I want you to think about, again, a person or a place, more specifically, that you can intentionally do some work to build this element. Okay, so let's say that again. You've got your list 1 to 6. You've already written in the names of people or places that you've identified for yourself. You're finding these things. Now I want you to take this and put a prevention lens on it. So if I was going to do prevention work, the work of building stronger people, building stronger kids, building stronger families, where's a spot that I personally can build more safety? And then how do I do that too? That's the second piece of that. So I want you to write down, there's a relationship, and so maybe it's a specific family that you're working with that you can think of, you know what, this is a family who's really struggling with safety. How do I begin in my role? How do I begin to help support safety with that family? And next is trustworthiness. So again, let's think about a space, so a place or a relationship where I personally can begin to build additional trustworthiness through my actions, through my communications. And then looking at the third one, peer support. Boardroom. Yep, that's great. That's a great comment, Brian. So the third one, peer support. So me personally, how can I do a better job? What are the relationships? What's the specific relationship? What's the name of that person that I can do a better peer support job with? Or is there a place? You know, is it through work? Is it through, you know, things that I'm doing with my kids' school? Is it some other setting? Collaboration and mutuality. So where in my own life are there places for me to build collaboration and mutuality with other people? Again, can we do that at work? Is there family that I can focus on that with? Are there advocates in my world that I could do a better job of, you know, working that through? What would that look like? What would I change if I was doing that? And then empowerment. Where in my life can I provide opportunity for other people? And where do I really want to focus on that? My kids, my spouse, relative, family that I work with, staff person that I manage. Where do I build empowerment? And then on the last one, cultural, historical, and gender issues. Where do I do that work? Where do I want to do more of that work? Okay, so I have drum lessons going on at my house, so if you can hear a lot of drumming, that's what's happening. So. All right, so I'll give you just a minute to think about those. So I know I'm driving you towards kind of putting some brain power into this, and I know you all kind of thought you were going to come and you're just going to listen and not have to like dive too deep, but I know I'm pushing you hard to kind of nail down some specifics on this. Anybody want to share like who you think or what relationship you'd like to work on, and maybe if you have a thought about what you'd like to do, and again, can be any one of these. You can share in the chat box if you'd like to, or you're welcome to take yourself off mute and share that way.
Yeah, Tim, this is Brian Barton. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Yeah, Tim, I appreciate the way you're approaching this today. It's I think it's preferable to get involved actively because I think you take more away from it than you just lecturing us, even though you have a lot of wisdom to share with us. I appreciate this approach. And I'm involved with Families Together New York State, And I jumped in with the a chat room comment of boardroom. And what I mean by that, Tim, is the board's an interesting place to address these 6 principles. And where I'm coming from on that, safety, trustworthiness, peer support, et cetera, is in the board, and all boards are different, but they tend to obviously get very tied up and concerned with the fiscal well-being of the organization. And that's for very pertinent reasons. However, as you went through and we went through together, the 6 trauma-informed principles, it's obvious that as we get involved with the families, we need to be ever so conscious of these principles. And as our people are involved with the families, and we're talking about relationship and how vital that is to the core of supporting and affirming and moving the families to achieve the goals that we're mutually interested in achieving, relationships at the heart of that. And it seems to me that oftentimes we undercut the very thing that we're using as the vehicle to support the families in making the necessary change. And that is what we bring to the table, and that is the relationship. And the reason I say that is the conditions that make the relationship possible, that is what the agency offers to the dynamic, that is the staff, the volunteer, whomever it might be. The conditions oftentimes don't support that very contribution, that being the weak, the poor conditions of work, such as salary, such as work conditions, et cetera. And I say board level becomes very important because the more conscious the members at the board table can be of raising questions as to how we can firm up and support bringing about better, healthier, viable conditions for the folks who actually are carrying the water on these significant relationship matters with the families we're working with, the healthier our organizations are going to be. Yeah. In other words, we can't be saying that we're prevention workers and families, look, we're emblematic of prevention when we're up and turning over staff constantly because the conditions don't really support having a stable workforce. So what I'd like to see throughout the organizations, and certainly at the board level, is frequently, regularly addressing the conditions of our staffing, that whatever is possible to give solid, healthy work conditions to the people going out and carrying the flag, that we be doing that, and that a fair portion of time at board meetings be spent addressing the conditions of our staff that are indeed the prevention workers. So That's where I'm coming from.
Thank you for that comment. It's right on the mark. That again, the whole point of what I'm hoping to push forward today is that we have to make prevention much more concrete than it has been in so many ways. We do it, we move through it, but there's an intentionality about the work, and this piece around 6 principles. Again, Brian, I completely agree. Andre, I love the comment that you put in the chat about, that's a fantastic example of intentionality at the organizational level, of really taking the time to unpack, what exactly are the actions that we're taking around these elements to put them in place. So any other comments somebody'd like to share, something that maybe you're thinking about? This is an action I want to take, around one of these elements. Anybody else want to share? Okay, so this piece, I would propose, and the piece that we talked about beforehand around hope. If we can't, as either providers or supervisors or organizations, if we can't get these two pieces down, then it's going to be so much more challenging for us to do real prevention work. And I would say that we're at risk probably of going through the motions with families, but we all know what that's like, of going through the motions. We know it, and the people that we're with know it. So I challenge you to take this forward. I appreciate your time and attention to it. So let's move on. We're going to take a look at this. So here's another concrete thing that I would like you to think about. We say this a lot. Words are really, really important. And words are really important. This is just a set that I put together. These are actually taken from, if you see there at the bottom, there's this is a great resource. It's called Go Zen Anxiety Relief for Children, and I think anxiety is an element that we've noted. For those of you that have been in this field helping families for a long time, I think we've all noted that it feels like there's this ramping up of anxiety issues for kids, for families. COVID has been the ultimate anxiety producing environment for all of us. I don't know anybody in my personal life who's exempt from that. These are some examples of things to say. We've used some of this today. Can you draw it? These are not meant to be an exhaustive list, but I do want to challenge you in whatever environment you're in, whether it's working directly with kids and families, whether it's working with parents, whether it's working with staff. What are the things that you need to say to people that support them in the way that helps them move forward, helps them build strong in whatever way that they need to? Those are things that are pretty critical. We don't spend enough time on those things. So we're not going to spend any time here, except that I always want to point out to people, this is the Adverse Childhood Experiences work. You're all familiar with that. But I always want to talk with people about this issue of neglect, because what we know in New York State, for instance, is that of all of the child abuse cases, the over 75,000 child abuse cases in the state, we know that upwards of 85% of those have neglect that is somehow attached to them. The research always tells us that neglect in many ways is more, or certainly as damaging as any other abuse experience to kids, because chews away at their development in some very, very serious ways. And so we've certainly turned our attention to do more around neglect, and it's certainly something that impacts so many of our kids and families. We always think we put it in the wrong category. We think neglect is about poor kids and poor families that live in some other neighborhood, but neglect is something that happens across the stratosphere of kids. Doesn't matter what your skin color is, doesn't matter what your bank account says. Neglect is a powerful thing that happens to a lot of kids. So I'll stop preaching about that. Everybody's familiar with this. Again, I didn't want to spend a lot of time, but I did want to flash it up there for you. We talk about protective factors all the time in the work that we do. I know you're familiar with these. So many of you are using these already. But again, I think this is another piece that gets us to operationalize the work around prevention, to think very specifically about what these 5 protective factors look like. Not just for our families. So our families is a really critical issue, but I think the work that really has begun to build out around this, one is the racial equity lens that Andre mentioned earlier, that there needs to be more thinking about this body of work, protective factors, from a racial equity lens, and there needs to be much more work thinking about this from a community position, that it's certainly about individual families, but communities have to mobilize around this kind of work, and organizations have to make commitments that really fill these blanks in local communities. So many times, and you know what, we're guilty of it too. We're not for profit trying to scramble and make things happen, but oftentimes we're pursuing organizationally something without really being intentional about where are the gaps, where do we really need to fill in what's happening, and how does that fit within the broader context of what's going on in the community. So share that with you. We are running close on time, so I'm going to close with this piece, and I cannot stop talking about this piece, because again, when we think about how do we make prevention concrete, prevention is about relationship. It is just, it's so hard to say, I'm going to do prevention to you. We don't do prevention to people. We build relationship with people that strengthens them. And this piece about resilience is something that all of us can take with us. And so I always challenge people to take this, and the first step is always look inward. So where do I fit with this? So what of these elements, so this is one list of elements of resilience. So what on this list have I got nailed down? What am I really good at? Am I an optimistic thinker? Do I do that really well? Maybe I solve problems really well, or maybe I'm great in terms of learning from my own mistakes. But what do I do well? And then maybe where are some places that I need to look for help, because that's an important aspect of all of this. How do we find help? How do we look to others for help? Many times we don't think about that. Okay, so how good am I at asking for help? It's on here. Social skills and the ability to seek assistance from others. How good am I at that? But where do I feel like I've got some space to build on? But then the next step with this that I always want people to do is I want you to think specifically. So here's our challenge in the last 2 minutes of our time together, specifically about one person in your life that you really would like to see them build resilience, Could be a family, could be your child, could be your spouse. One person. Which one of these things do you think you could work on with them? Could you help with self-esteem, self-control, optimistic thinking patterns? Prevention is intentional. Prevention is relationship. I know I've thrown a bunch of stuff at you. I've asked you to kind of break out of your shell, do a little bit of homework, thinking hard about kind of your relationships, the work that you're doing with prevention. I challenge you with this piece to take this forward. How do you build resilience today? What's that relationship that you focus on and make some change happen? So thank you very, very much for your time and for your attention. I appreciate all of your drawings. They were beautiful. And I appreciate above all the work that you are doing around prevention. You make a difference. And I know some days you probably don't feel that way, but you're making a difference with the people around you. Keep going, keep doing what you're doing, because it's how we build strong families. So thank you. Maggie, I don't know if you have a closing that you need to do or.
Yes, thank you very much, Tim. This was a great angle and perspective and challenged me to think a little bit this morning, which I think I needed. We do have a hand raised from Devera. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but I know it is 12 o'clock, so if people have to hop off, we completely understand. I know we're backing our Zoom meetings up back to back, but if anybody has any questions or would like to share some comments, I'm opening up the floor now.
I didn't realize the time when I raised my hand. I did hear him say he was closing out, but I just wanted to say I really, really got something out of this time and presentation. And I work with low-income first-time moms, and everything that you went over is something that we use for ourselves as the nurses and the supervisors. We come together in meetings and we discuss this, and this is what we use for our clients. And I really love everything, the props, everything that you just did with us. I am going to present in our next team meeting to move it forward and to pass it on, either with family members or, anybody, because this was very, very useful. And I think it's very useful in trying to figure out how to help others in the community. And in this time of social media and Zoom and everything, it's something that they don't have to go far to get, as far as trying to find things to help them be resilient and to have hope. So I really commend you. Thank you for having this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. So just a quick reminder, I will be sending out a follow-up email with Tim's slides and some resources. I know we have a couple resilience handouts and protective factors handouts that Prevent Child Abuse New York uses, so I'm happy to attach those to the email. Again, there will be links to our surveys. We're partners with Center for Human Services Research, so it would mean the world to us if you could fill those out for our grant requirements. If no one has any further questions or comments, I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting out. And thank you again so much, Tim, for this presentation. Happy Child Abuse Prevention Month. Wear blue. And make sure to follow our social media accounts, Prevent Child Abuse New York, for continued updates. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.